What is up, YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. If you are not already subscribing, what are you doing? It doesn't cost you nothing, girl. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a little comment, even if it's hate. For today's video, I am sure that you guys have probably seen this in the headlines. I mean, who is not talking about the It Ends With Us drama between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni? And what you might have seen recently in the news is that a PR firm is now suing Blake Lively for defamation in the It Ends With Us group of suits. Now, what I want to investigate in today's video is who is this PR firm, aka Jed Wallace? What is his involvement with this case, allegedly? And what is his history working? Like, is he really this just regular guy that got taken advantage of by Blake Lively? And is he just some PR firm that is doing nothing but good things for clients like Justin Baldoni? Well, I can tell you now, I don't believe that a lot of those things are necessarily the way that the media is reporting on them. Before I dive into this video, I just need to say real quick about this Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni drama. Yes, I believe that Justin Baldoni has every right to defend himself, especially when his career was being put on jeopardy. But I feel like the world and media is like this pendulum that swings. It's either one day super in your favor, the next day it's not in your favor. And what I feel like is going on right now towards Blake Lively, even though I strongly believe Justin Baldoni has every right to defend himself, I think that there is this dog pile happening on Blake Lively. And I do believe that some individuals, in my opinion, such as Jed Wallace of Street Relations, Inc., is a part of this dog pile. All right, so I'm gonna start us off with just reminding you guys about some important dates with this It Ends With Us saga of court battle. If you guys can remember the famous New York Times article that was Blake Lively's article exposing Justin Baldoni and everything that he had done on the It Ends With Us set, she was claiming that he had sexually harassed her, that he whispered in her ear, "It smells so good," that there was unwanted or unscripted kissing and fondling, and just a myriad of other complaints that are obviously being played right now out in the court of public opinion and what is really happening in the courtroom. Now, the day before this article had come out, where basically everybody had known about this case, that is when Blake Lively filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department. The important thing to note about this complaint is that it was just a complaint. And what the complaint had attached to it was Exhibit A, which in this case was a draft of Blake Lively's lawsuit that she was intending to file, or at least was maybe tricking the public to thinking that she was gonna file this because she had put it out there and it looked like a lawsuit to everybody. Now, the important thing about this kind of complaint is that it's a private complaint. Nobody has to know about it, but obviously Blake Lively was trying to get everyone to be aware that this complaint was being filed and that there was this lawsuit that was maybe going to happen, but to the general public, it was like, damn, Blake Lively just filed this massive lawsuit. Now, some people will say it was due to pressure. Other people will say it was just the sequence of events, that she was always intending to file this. But 11 days after that initial complaint was filed, she then files the actual lawsuit. So that is now December 31st. Like I said, a lot of people say, hey, maybe she was pressured by fans because people were like, wait, that was just a complaint, Blake. It wasn't an actual lawsuit. Get in your car and go file that lawsuit. Let's not be lazy, all right? This is not the It Ends With a set where the wardrobe just comes to your room, the cast shows up in your room, Justin Baldoni is sitting there across the couch from you, ready to smother you with his lips, but you maybe think that he is not acting. You need to go file your lawsuit. So the important thing to know about the lawsuit that got filed on December 31st was that it had dropped off two people/entities from it. One was Jed Wallace, and number two was Street Relations, Inc., which was or is Jed Wallace's PR firm. And that is what becomes the basis of the legal battle that is now going on that we have seen in the headlines today. So let us examine who is Jed Wallace. So we're gonna first take a look at who he is within Blake Lively's lawsuit. Now, it's also claimed in Blake Lively's lawsuit that Jed Wallace was retained as a subcontractor for the TAG PR firm, which is the other defendants that are mentioned in the case on Justin Baldoni's side, Melissa Nathan, Jennifer Abel, and supposedly that he was involved in orchestrating a digital smear campaign against Blake Lively. Now, before Jed gets on my ass about what I'm gonna say in this video, this is all my opinion. Like Tamara said, it's my opinion. Before I read you guys screenshots from Blake Lively's lawsuit, I just want us to pause and consider how this digital smear campaign is being represented to us by the Justin Baldoni team. And if you guys have not seen my video covering that topic, I would implore you guys to go watch it because I do give a very fair analysis of both sides. But one thing that I do say in that video, an opinion that I still hold to this day, is that there's something going on. This is not just a situation in which Justin Baldoni only wanted to highlight himself and the way that he supports domestic violence survivors. And it's not just the team promoting content that he is in. They are also actively engaging with content that Blake and Ryan Reynolds are a part of. So I just don't want us to, just because yes, we're supporting Justin Baldoni and saying that he should stand up for himself about these claims, I don't want us to just make a blanket statement that nothing at all could be going on, because I don't think that the evidence really points that there's nothing going on. In fact, there's evidence present because there's obviously something existing. So this first text is from August 10th, which is the day after It Ends With Us premieres. And in this text, we can see that Melissa Nathan is texting about something successful happening via a digital campaign. We've also started to see a shift on social, due largely to Jed and his team's efforts to shift the narrative towards shining a spotlight on Blake and Ryan. Again, we'll continue to send links and screenshots, but wanted to send an update in the meantime. Obviously, if Jed is being credited from shifting the narrative towards Blake and Ryan, that doesn't mean that he's just sitting at home eating potato chips and doing absolutely nothing, okay? Him and his team are being cited here as doing something. The obvious thing that I want to point out too is that, think about it from a company perspective. If I was being subcontracted to do a job, why would I even be in communication with my boss if I'm not doing a job? Do you understand? Subcontractors work independently, and they are not just like, yes, they could be on retainer in terms of you use them often, but you're not engaging with them unless there's an active project going on. Melissa Nathan then texts Jennifer Abel another message, which is just a quote from Jed. And the quote says, "We are crushing it on Reddit, Jed." So this is a message from Melissa Nathan to Jennifer Abel, just reporting, hey, this is the feedback that we're getting from Jed. We later see other references to Jed and his involvement in Blake Lively's petition for a deposition. We're gonna get into that petition a little bit later, but I just wanna read you some messages from that deposition because it provides a little bit more light into Jed's involvement. This quote is from Melissa Nathan to Jennifer Abel, and it says, "Can I start a signal thread with you, me, and Jed, just in case you need him to connect you to Bryan, because they're very close." Now we're gonna get into the other half of that, which is that Jed and Bryan Freedman potentially, allegedly, according to this quote, are very close. But for now, let's table that, put that to the side. Let's look at the first part of this. So they want to set up a signal thread. What is Signal, you might ask? And now, a message from our sponsors. I'm kidding, but I'm gonna read you what Signal is on my phone. Signal is a messaging app with privacy at its core. It is free and easy to use with strong end-to-end encryption that keeps your communication completely private. Just showing you some screenshots of Signal's marketing here. It is built for privacy. Everything you send and receive in Signal is end-to-end encrypted. Disappearing messages. Keep your messages history tidy. Voice and video calls. Call a friend or group from anywhere. Stories. Share photo, video, and text stories that disappear in 24 hours. On and on, there's more to read about Signal, but what you can understand is that this is an app that is obviously being preferred when we are communicating with someone like Jed Wallace. This is an app that he wants allegedly to be using, because that's why we're moving on from that app to this app, because obviously with Justin, we're sending text messages, but with Jed, we should be using this app called Signal. Now, why does this matter? The reason that it matters is because if Blake Lively wanted to prove that there was some digital army, some campaign, then she would have a very hard time doing that with somebody who uses some platform like Signal for all of their communications, where messages can be deleted instantly, everything is end-to-end encrypted. It would be incredibly difficult for Blake Lively to be able to get information from this, and she is finding it incredibly difficult to find information on this. In fact, we're going to talk about this in this video, but she has filed a petition for a deposition, and obviously in response to that, she received a lawsuit from Jed Wallace. Again, it's not that we cannot discredit the fact that Blake Lively was in fact exaggerating experiences on the movie with Justin Baldoni. We can agree with that, but what we can also agree on is that there are always nuances, and I think when a team like Justin Baldoni, Bryan, Freedman, Jed Wallace, everybody on that side seem to take a stance to the public that we did nothing wrong, Blake Lively is 100% a liar. If there's ever a situation where you are 0% at fault and the other person is 100% at fault, it's got to be a very specific kind of situation, but most likely there's always some give somewhere. There's always something, you know what I mean? No one just randomly spurs up these kinds of feelings. Now, before we get to today's date, let us continue looking back into the past. We're going to throw it all the way back now to 2021. And the reason why we're looking at this date is because this is the year in which Bam Margera, you might know him from the show Jackass 4, sued Paramount Pictures and other executives, including, I don't think he sued Jed Wallace, but including information about presumably the same Jed Wallace that we are talking about today. And you're gonna be shocked in the context in which he is being named. Now, just to give you a quick snapshot on Bam Margera in this situation, basically during the filming of Jackass 4, like I said, that happened in 2021, Bam was having difficulties with sobriety. He was made to participate in multiple drug testings during the filming of the show. He was also part of like a wellness program that included a therapist, different medications that he was being required to take as part of this Get Better program so he could be sober for the show. He was ultimately placed under a conservatorship temporarily during this time. And the reason why he is filing a lawsuit in 2021 is because he claimed that he had different mental illnesses at that time that people were aware of that would have essentially placed whatever they had done to him under kind of a discrimination category. So I encourage everyone to read that if you guys are interested in learning more information that I don't mention in this video about Jed Wallace. But they talk about the lawsuit from that time, which I'm gonna read you a quote from it, because actually if you try to find this in the lawsuit now, some of that information is redacted. So I do believe mentions of Jed Wallace are not present there if you just try to search for this. In 2020, Paramount Pictures hired Wallace to oversee a substance abuse treatment program for Margera, a stuntman who was part of the Jackass franchise. In his lawsuit against Paramount, which was eventually settled on undisclosed terms, Margera said that Paramount required him to participate in the program in order to remain involved in the production of the movie, Jackass Forever. The lawsuit says Wallace assembled a team that included his client Heather Hayes. There's more. At the time, Margera believed that Wallace had the final say on which medications were prescribed to him based on Wallace's repeated statements that he was in charge of the program, per the complaint. But Wallace was not qualified to manage his treatment program, Margera said later in his lawsuit. Wallace did not have the bachelor's degree in biology from Fordham that he claimed to have. the complaint says. I just want you guys to think about that for 1 second, please. Just pause for me right now, you guys. You are telling me in 2020, which was just 5 years ago, Jed Wallace, who is now in charge, presumably, of a digital army, maybe not, against Blake Lively, 5 years ago, he was overseeing a substance abuse treatment program for this celebrity, Bam Margera. I'm sorry, you guys. I personally have career transition. I did it 4 or 5 years ago. Meaning I taught myself everything I needed to know, right? I taught myself everything I need to know so that I can career transition. And it took me like about 4 years to like really fully do that. You were telling me that Jed Wallace went from seemingly a doctor who was administering medication allegedly, who was positioning himself as the head of this abuse program, who positioned himself to have this degree in biology, is now the head of some digital PR for a major client, someone like Justin Baldoni, somebody who's working with a major production company that's backed by a billionaire. He is now suddenly, that is one of his clients that he is working with or being subcontracted for, allegedly. How did he career transition so strategically and intelligently and learn a whole new skill set? I want to show you quickly in Business Insider's article because they briefly go through Jed Wallace's career history. Wallace moved to Los Angeles in mid-1990s, attending acting classes at the Beverly Hills Playhouse and working at a restaurant on Montana Avenue. A person who knew him at the time said eventually he landed in public relations between 2004 and 2006. Multiple press releases indicate he worked for MPH PR, owned by Mike Hills, whose clients included the advertising agency RMD Entertainment Group and Virtruz Systems, which created training simulators for law enforcement and military. Media runs in Wallace's family. His father, Roger, died in 2021, was a communications professor at the University of Scranton and taught classes in radio production. Wallace started street relations in Los Angeles in 2007. Over the years, he amassed a diverse client list, including Travis Allen, a California State Assembly candidate, Dr. David Alessi, a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon. Wallace also represented a number of substance abuse recovery groups, including a now shuttered addiction recovery in New Jersey and a nonprofit that helps mothers struggling with addiction and mental illness. He's also worked with Heather Hayes and Associates, a Georgia-based concierge service for addiction recovery. In 2020, Paramount Pictures hired Wallace to oversee a substance abuse treatment program for Margera. And it goes on to name other things. So I don't know, I read that list and I'm like, whoa. Actually, this guy kind of came from nothing. He moved out here. He had like a kind of a simple job. They said that he had connections in it because his dad was a communications professor who had a background in radio production. But it's like, okay, that doesn't really get you too far. So you move out to LA, you have all these kinds of jobs, you work for PR, you also work for different like recovery programs, substance abuse programs, and you do a lot of really great work and it's super awesome, but it's just so diverse. Like then you get hired in 2020 by Paramount Pictures, who's a huge deal, and now you are administering different things. And then now 5 years after that, you are working for huge PR companies as kind of like a digital right-hand man. This article even quotes from Jed Wallace, apparently on his own LinkedIn page. He wrote for himself on his LinkedIn page, which is no longer available. The crisis guru described himself as a hired gun with a proprietary formula for defining artists and trends. I was like, that's really impressive. That is really impressive, that career switch. So I'm like, is Jed Wallace super impressive at career transitioning, or is he maybe like just kind of has this vibe like, I'm gonna fake it till I make it a little bit. I'm Jed, I am not hating on your game. I'm really not. I'm just saying like, are you kind of this guy that you're like, okay, I'm just gonna like say that I know how to do something and I'm just gonna do it, and I I probably have a lot of like good common sense, and I'm just gonna like do it, you know what I mean? And he's doing it. He is working with super major clients. All right, so let's move on to the petition for Rule 202 deposition, which is the petition that was filed by Blake Lively. Now, keep in mind what these kinds of petitions do generally is it allows you to seek more information related to your case. Now, the part where Blake Lively bit herself in the ass is that she had mentioned Jed Wallace in the complaint, which she publicized as the lawsuit that she was going to file, but at that time it was just a drafted lawsuit that was a part of a complaint. She publicizes, making it seem as though she is going to file it, and then when she goes to file it 11 days later, she drops Jed Wallace from it, and he's like, lost business, people have looked into him, people are talking about him. At least that's what he's claiming. He's lost business and money and revenue, but it's like she doesn't name him again, and then she instead files this petition to get more information. It was like, girl, if you're gonna include someone in the lawsuit, which she didn't do initially, obviously, but if you're gonna include someone making it seem as though you're going to file a lawsuit, why are you including their name if you don't have sufficient evidence to be including them on there? So it was just like, girl, you're shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. Like, you're including him. But I get it, because part of my point is there's not a lot of information on him. Now, it looks like this petition was filed on January 21st, 2025. Now, Blake Lively does end up dropping this petition, and she does this on February 4th, which also happens to be the date that Jed Wallace slaps his lawsuit, his defamation lawsuit, back at Blake Lively. Now, I was looking into like why this might happen. I wasn't able to really figure it out on my own. I relied on this TikToker who is a lawyer, and she basically describes that it's common in law where maybe his lawyer, Jed Wallace's lawyer, had told Blake Lively's lawyer, like, hey, we're gonna file this lawsuit. Like, you're filing this petition because you're trying to seek more information from him, but he's actually gonna sue you for defamation just in general. So you don't even need the deposition. We're just going to like sue you, and like through this process of suing you, then like you're gonna get the information that you're seeking from him. Now, we can see in a separate court document that's filed by Blake Lively where she's requesting for an extension to the trial, we can see that Jed Wallace is mentioned here. The modest extension will allow for Miss Lively to address the extensive new facts and claims at issue in this litigation. Such an extension is also warranted given that after counsel for Miss Lively informed the court on February 3rd, 2025, that she intended to amend her complaint to add additional parties and claims. One of those intended parties, Jed Wallace, along with his company, Street Relations, filed an anticipatory and meritless 10-page complaint in federal district court in Texas regarding issues that substantially overlap with the issues in this litigation. So she's basically saying like, hey, I get it, yet you wanted to sue me, but you're literally suing me on stuff that I'm already including in my complaint. Like, she's like, why do I have to get sued based off of your lawsuit? Because I'm already suing you right now. I'm like, I filed this petition because I'm using it as part of my current lawsuit. Like, why are you trying to get your own lawsuit right now? Like, we're gonna fight this out anyway. Why are you wanting to do it on your lawsuit? Is basically what she's saying. So Street Relations Inc. is a company that is based out of California, but Jed Wallace is notably from Dripping Springs, Texas. So he moves Street Relations Inc. out of California and into Texas. Now, you could search this on California's Secretary of State. I'm not doxing a bitch over here, okay? So this is public information. You could see what's going on with businesses. Now, here is the way that it is listed inside of the California Department of State. So there was a conversion to non-qualified entity. We can also see the actual file that was downloaded. Now, I am going to redact the address information that is part of this document, but hey, like I said, we're not trying to dox people here. We're just trying to talk about a subject. We can see in the certificate of conversion that Jed Wallace is listed as the president. He's also listed as the secretary. And what we can see as well, there is a conversion from the type of entity, which is as you can see here, listed as a general stock corporation and is now going to be a for-profit corporation and out of the Texas jurisdiction. Now, this happens 2 days after Jed's lawsuit. Why do I think this happens? There's some weird thing that's going on between the jurisdiction that they want to fight this court in. Blake Lively is like, no, I want to fight it outside of Texas. And Jed Wallace is like, no, I want to fight it inside of Texas. Like, that is like a point of the lawsuit that we're going to talk about in a little bit, is that he wants to fight this in his home court. So from the location side, I get it. Blake Lively did initially state that this petition was relevant in his home court because it was the damages were, or the accusation was made while Jed Wallace was located in Dripping Springs, Texas. But for some reason, she kind of walks back a little bit on that, and then she's like, she kind of doesn't want to necessarily fight it in his home court. So we're not really sure why that happens, but Jed Wallace moving his business to Texas, it's a little more ammunition for him to say, hey, you mentioned me and I live here, and then hey, my business now it moves here. From the entity type being converted, I don't know what that means, and I'm like, hey, is anybody who is business savvy out there, if you guys know why that would matter? If there is something to that, which there could very well be like absolutely nothing to it, he just maybe wanted to just like put a different name right there. But if there is something to it, I feel like it has a very intricate relationship to like what case he is being sued on, or what he maybe doesn't have to provide to like the courts. I don't know, some weird like intricacy in why he would do that, like if there's a connection there. All right, so now we're moving on to the modern day. February 4th, 2025 is when Jed Wallace does file his defamation lawsuit against Blake Lively, which I have read. I'm gonna walk us through key things that stood out to me that are very, very interesting for Jed Wallace to do this. So Jed Wallace is suing for a total of $7 million, which is a lot of money. Like I said, he is suing Blake Lively for defamation. And the reason why this is interesting is because there's two very key principles about defamation that most of us know about, which the first principle is that defamation, in order to be proven in a court of law, has to prove that it did negatively impact a reputation. It actually used to be something that became really hard to win, but I feel like lately a lot of people have been winning defamation lawsuits. I'm really curious why people think that shift is happening, but at one point it was super hard to prove that there was a loss to your reputation. But the second thing that was the easier thing to prove, was that something was actually untrue. And a key thing about Jed Wallace's defamation lawsuit is that he mentions, because there's a disparity in Blake Lively as this super celebrity and Jed Wallace as this like regular guy, he does not have to prove that something is untrue. He only has to prove that it is negligent, and that is according to his lawsuit. Although Lively is a public figure, Wallace and Street are not. Thus, plaintiffs need prove only negligence to establish liability. However, plaintiffs also seek punitive damages in the amount of not less than $6 million. And to satisfy the evidentiary burden in establishing the right to such damages, they must demonstrate actual malice. That is, that Lively either knew the allegations were false at the time she made them, or she acted in reckless disregard of the truth, that she had a high degree of awareness of falsity and in fact entertained serious doubt about their truth. If that is not the craziest word vomit of your life, I don't know what to tell you, because what we just read was basically some way of basically summarizing in Jed Wallace's case. Even though most of the time defamation lawsuits, you have to prove that it's not true and there was a loss to reputation. In Jed Wallace's case, no. What we're gonna prove to you is that she was just negligent about the information, and that she didn't have a lot of information, that she was aware that there was a percentage of falsity that she could have been making that could have greatly impacted him. So it's like, we just have to prove that she was not really super aware of the claim that she made, which Jed Wallace already knows is the case. Obviously, she is filing a petition to seek more information because she's trying to prove that you did do something, but you also know, hey, I'm using Signal, everything's end-to-end encrypted. Now, the other thing that Blake Lively shot herself in the foot about in this lawsuit was that when she filed that petition, when she removed it or whatever, discarded it, she basically non-suited it. And what that means is that she cannot try the same thing again. So if some legal scholar out there is watching this and like, no, that's not how it works. What I'm understanding this means is that, hey, I actually can't even try you now because I'm gonna non-suit. I'm just gonna let this go from Blake Lively's side. I'm gonna let this go. I've got the big case that's going on right now that everyone's paying attention to. I'm just not gonna worry about this. I'm gonna non-suit it. And what that means is, yeah, I'm just not like, I can't try this case twice. Now, I didn't expect that this guy was now gonna sue me on the basis that I was maybe just negligent, because that's obviously true. I submitted this petition. Like, I obviously didn't know fully what was going on. And I mean, to Jed Wallace's credit, obviously, if you are just like someone who's under the radar, isn't known by a lot of people, and now your name is being mentioned everywhere, of course, you're gonna feel like that is frustrating and you're gonna be like, shit, like I'm just a regular guy. Of course, you're gonna feel some kind of way about that. He also is suing in the fact that the harm to his business, Street Relations Inc., was damaged up to and over $1 million. Now, one Reddit user did point this out, which I thought was actually kind of funny. Sorry, Jed. She was like, wait, first of all, Jed claims to be a crisis PR firm that is like helping family members and important people in the times where the world is attacking them and they have like nothing else to defend themselves. But when that happens to him on this big scale, it's like he doesn't have the material or equipment to do that for himself. I feel like you're losing yourself business, Jed. I'm like, you should put your skills right now to the test, sway the whole thing in your favor, and then like you won't have to be defamed. Like, isn't that your whole thing that you do as a business? He also claims in his suit that Blake Lively has already admitted to the fact that she does not have information about him to make that claim, that she was wrong about it. And I'm like, wait, where is Jed reading this, seeing this? Like, because he doesn't mention it as like this, her non-suiting this petition is evidence of that. It's like, it seems like she said that to him in another context. So I'm like, when did that happen? Has anyone heard about this? It says, as explained above, Miss Lively has alleged 10 different causes of action against Wallace and or Street, although she now admits that the CRD complaint and the precursor, which caused great harm to plaintiffs' businesses by the way of lost business, exceeding the threshold monetary limits, yada, 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 was without factual support, even though she now belatedly attempts to obtain some through her 202 petition. So I was like, when did she claim that those things were not with support? Isn't that the whole point of her lawsuit? He also demands a jury for this trial, which I think is another key thing, is that he knows public sentiment. He's saying, I know that people are maybe not liking Blake right now. Maybe this would be a good idea. Let's do a jury. People are going to side with me. Again, this is in my opinion. But just so you can kind of see the kinds of people we're dealing with, yes, Jed Wallace, we don't know him super well. Bryan Freedman, he's represented a bunch of A-listers. But we kind of can see the way that these guys are. Like, they're not just regular lawyers. Like, they're like these a little bit more cutthroat lawyers. There's an interview with Bryan Freedman and TMZ, and they're basically kind of telling him like, hey, like you guys are suing each other for defamation, but you guys kind of both planted stories with us. Like, don't you think that that doesn't really make sense? It's just kind of like how LA works or Hollywood works, isn't it? And he takes this like kind of approach, like a little bit of a bully. He's like, okay, Harvey, since you're saying that we both feed you guys story, like you're gonna be a witness. Harvey then like doubles down. He's like, I mean, I'm just saying that's the truth. Like you guys both do this kind of thing. And Bryan Freeman's like, okay, Harvey. I was like, it seems like you want to be an expert witness.
Both sides tried to skew this story because we've been on the recipient end of that. Justin's team, Blake's team. We're on that receiving end. We've seen it. So that's the part I don't get.
Well, I'd say this, Harvey, you know, you just kind of made yourself a witness. So what I would say is say.
Well, that's okay. I'm okay with that because I could talk about things that Blake's team did to him and things that Justin's team did to Blake. And I could talk about both.
You might be an expert witness, actually. And because you've been doing it for so long.
Because it sounds like something that we have seen
for
19 years, Bryan, that publicists that...
That's what they do.
Just the menacing tone. He's not saying a lot, but he's saying everything. He's kind of like, I know you don't want to do this, Harvey. I'm about to put you as a witness if you keep talking right now. He kind of gives him a little nudge. What people also noticed on Reddit was that there is an article by TMZ, which was released December 21st, one day before the New York Times article about the CRD complaint. And why does that matter? Is because this article was very anti-Blake Lively. It does not seem like it is the same group that is trying to put out this story about Justin Baldoni. It seems like it's coming from the opposite side. And that would basically undermine the idea that Justin Baldoni's lawsuit, which claims defamation on the basis of the New York Times article, was actually trying to do the exact same thing towards Blake Lively in breaking the story on TMZ. Do you see what I'm saying? It just so happened that Blake Lively's story ended up breaking this and people were talking nonstop, like all the media picked up on it. But there was an equally damaging story about Blake Lively basically saying that this complaint was coming from nothing, but nobody paid attention to that because everybody was so focused on what Blake Lively was saying. All right, so let's talk about the connection between now Bryan, Freedman, and Jed Wallace. According to Blake Lively's petition for the deposition, you can see in the text message a reference to Jed Wallace being very close to somebody by the name of Bryan. The message says, "Can I start a signal thread with you, me, and Jed, just in case you need him to connect you to Bryan because they are very close." Now, those of us with critical thinking skills, we're like, wait, Jed Wallace already knows Bryan Freedman? Now, this is speculation because we don't know exactly if Bryan mentioned there is Bryan Freedman, but we're speculating and it's also mentioned in her petition. I think that's a major question if these two know each other because Jed Wallace maybe put Melissa's team and Justin Baldoni in communication with Bryan Freedman, who is now representing this case. The other thing that a lot of Reddit users were pointing out was that if you mention information about Jed Wallace, or if you mention information about Bryan Freedman and his sexual assault case involving an underage person, you will see that those comments, posts, whatever, are significantly downvoted, which means they are hidden from view on Reddit. So all I'm saying is that if this is true, this would draw a very clear line as to why that is also happening on Reddit. So what I'm thinking is that these guys are not regular guys. Jed Wallace is not as regular of a guy as we think he is. Like, maybe we don't know him, but he definitely could be somebody with actually a lot of money and power, at least to be friends with high up lawyers, to have this kind of A-list clientele, to be hired for Paramount Pictures on a specific project. Like, you're not just some regular guy that lives in a multi-million-dollar home in Dripping Springs, Texas. Like, you are somebody of some level of stature. The other thing I think is super interesting, and this is why we have to always position our thinking as realizing that we are inside of the court of public opinion when we're watching the news or watching people talk about this, is that Bryan Freedman is being hailed as like, look at this guy is willing to put out all the evidence about the trial to the public. Like, look how transparent he is. Now, they know that they have hard evidence against Blake Lively, right? And they're engaging in a lawsuit. She filed the complaint. She did make it into this kind of culture war. She did make it that, but she had this thing. She's like, okay, fine, I'm gonna file a lawsuit. Bryan Freedman's now on air on different talk shows, podcasts, talking about the fact that he is gonna just show everything to the public. And look how transparent this guy is. And Blake Lively is like saying like, wait, I'm putting a gag order on you because why are you telling everybody what we're gonna talk about in court? Because if you know, for their trial, they're trying to have a jury sit for the trial. And if you're showing everybody in the public all the information, you are not gonna be able to help it that you see something on TikTok, that you're in the grocery store picking up a magazine, that somebody happens to mention you something about this story because it's being played out so much and so publicly. Like, you're gonna be swayed, everyone's gonna hear about it. How is it possible that you're gonna have a completely impartial jury, which is always the goal in these kinds of situations? And Blake Lively is saying like, hey, I'm putting a gag on you, bitch, because you need to shut your trap. Like, let's play it out in court. She might very well be like lying from her side and Justin Baldoni has this hard event and he's gonna win, but she's like, I filed it, let's just play it quietly. Like, we don't have to make it a whole scene. And like, everybody wants to make it a big scene, like including Justin Baldoni. Like, you guys, you cannot help, like I said, he has every right to defend himself, but you cannot help but read his lawsuit, any additional like motions / filings by his team, and not realize that they read like Hollywood scripts. They're so like dramatic in the way that they're written. If you read Jed Wallace's lawsuit, it's so pragmatic, matter of fact, no evidence given. Did I do it? Was I the social mastermind? Nothing. You're getting zip, zilch, nada. So to me, Blake Lively pretty much is just losing the culture war completely. Like, that's why I feel for her, because the pendulum is swinging so against her side. The story in the public that's playing out is basically she is 100% lying and this side is 100% telling the truth. How is that possible? You guys ask yourself, common sense. How is that ever going to be the story? So it's very, very, very interesting, and I do feel as though, in my opinion, that Jed Wallace is dogpiling on Blake Lively because he knows she's losing the culture war. She does not have any evidence. I don't even have to sue you on the fact that it could be true or not. I'm just gonna sue you on the fact that it could maybe be true and that you were just being negligent. Like, you didn't know if it was true or not. And I have evidence of that because you were filing a petition to get more information from me. And I also know that I use an app called Signal and nobody can see the messages. Jed Wallace, he's very hard to find. There's only one photo that we have of this guy, and that's the only photo that people are going off of, and it's not even that identifiable. The last thing I want to point out about Jed Wallace is, like, look at his current lawyer that is filing this petition for him. He is a big named lawyer in Texas. Now, I'm showing you guys a little excerpt from the American College of Trial Lawyers because Jed Wallace's lawyer, Chip Babcock, his current lawyer, was serving as a panelist for this event. According to this panelist intro, Chip has represented individuals such as Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Phil McGraw, George W. Bush, and Reggie Love, aide to President Obama. Do you think that anybody could just afford this big name lawyer? Do you think anybody could just have him take him on as a client? It just doesn't seem likely that this is just some regular guy. He is doing things potentially according to the lawsuits, but will not be able to really like be in court. He's like kind of perfectly removed himself from it. I just say this, when Justin Baldoni's team is telling you the story that we did not like push things against Blake Lively and nothing was against her favor, we just propped things up that made you look good. But there's also messages where they're saying like, hey, they've shifted the narrative towards Blake and Bryan, and we see like negative things coming out at that time. You're also a subcontract. You don't even work for the actual PR agency. Like, they are paying you to do a specific project. That's why you're in communication with them. And you're gonna tell me that it's him and his teams, plural, that are doing something, but they're only posting positive stuff about Justin? Like, none of that is lining up for me. Like, none of it's lining up for me, unfortunately. And I think it's like, you're obviously doing something against Blake Lively, and unfortunately, like, this is probably the hardest suit that she's gonna win, but this is probably the suit to be actually paying attention to, honestly, for Blake Lively. And with that being said, I wanna thank you guys so much for watching this video. I feel like I rambled so much, but thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys will tune in to the next one. Bye, everybody.